Thank you very much. I greet you all. Good morning. What I'm going to say is not very different from Catherine Marshall said, and my friend on my left-hand side. They've already alluded to some of the issues. And let me take this opportunity to say that Catherine Marshall has been a colleague, a mentor, and a friend. I'm delighted to see you here today after some time. This is the first time I'm invited for this meeting, and I'm really thrilled. There's so many other conferences, but this is unusual in the sense that it brings people from all walks of life, especially the religious leaders, to interact with all of us. Let me just point out one thing that I read, which says, we're all brothers. I want to ask Sant'Egidio, aren't we brothers and sisters as well? Because it says here is that, I wrote it somewhere, people as brothers. I would be more comfortable if we said people are brothers and sisters all over in humanity. Thank you. I want to look at peace in a more comprehensive manner because peace is not just the absence of guns or absence of wars. Comprehensive peace is when people have food security and when people have access to social services that my other two speakers have mentioned in there. Access to education, access to basic social services, water, health services, and so on and so forth. Yes, I can say this, that peace is possible, but, and this is a very big but, unless we can fix the drivers of conflicts. The drivers of conflict are many. Poverty is among them. And in poverty, there's marginalization. Governance issues, and I'm talking mainly in the context of Africa that I know, although I've worked in many other countries around the world. So you have poverty, you have unemployment, especially of youth. You have climate change, which is a big threat. So I will confine myself and talk mainly about those. What is always going on in my mind is that development partners have invested heavily in poverty alleviation or total elimination of poverty. But poverty persists, and actually it's getting worse. Unfortunately, I don't have any data here to prove that, but a lot of studies that have been conducted will tell you that poverty is getting worse. Why are all these investments in poverty alleviation is not having the desired impact? Don't you think it is time development partners go back on the drawing board to analyze why it's getting worse despite all the heavy investments that have been put into poverty? Because when you look at most conflicts, like I said, even in Asia or Latin America, I've been senior director at the World Bank for countries in conflict. And I know what it is that drives conflicts in Latin America, in Africa, in some parts of Asia. And poverty is a main player in that. And this situation is going to get worse as a result of the pandemic, COVID-19. What bothers me even more is, let's look at education alone in developing countries, that during the pandemic, during the lockdown, schools were obviously closed, but children of the rich or Middlebridge were able to continue studying online, and they continue to study online. The mass majority who are poor had no access to computer, leave alone computer, even generate, or even power to be able to conduct some kind of studies. So we're going to have a generation of uneducated who are poor, who will turn to war. As the introduction said, I was interviewing some child soldiers in northern Uganda. And there were those who were forcefully recruited to fight. But there were also those who went in, but there were also those who managed to escape from the rebels. So when I asked some of them, why did you not try to escape like the others escaped? And the question was, but you know, we got there, at first I was guilty, but when I was taught how to use the gun gave me power. Before I was abducted to fight, I went without food maybe for 3 days, but now I have a gun, so I can go and rob. I can go and use the gun to get food. I can eat every day. I have clothes. I can even take care of my siblings and family. So with this in mind, it's extremely worrying that what are we going to do to enable these disadvantaged children who come from very impoverished homes to catch up in terms of education, so that they're not on the street, so that they're not lured by warlords to fight wars that they don't understand. We need to address these problems. There's the issue of governance. Let me talk about democracy. For a long time, it was believed that democracy was a panacea. It would stop conflicts. It would make leaders accountable. It would promote economic development. But the kind of democracies I'm seeing in Africa in particular, even in Latin America, is not the Western type of democracy that we thought would solve these problems, because it's marred by vote rigging. It's marred by violence. It is, leaders are not accountable, even if they're elected. So shall we continue with this kind of democracy where we go and rubber stamp that elections is going to take place, fantastic, and then we stamp that, yes, people were able to go to the polling stations and vote, and yet leaders are not accountable to their people. And yet votes were bought. And yet it was not a question of convincing people because of their manifesto, but because you have poor people to whom you give $10, and that makes a huge difference for him or her, and will go to the polling station and vote. So we need to also examine whether governance is, whether the democracy we are practicing is working or not working. Should we come up with something different? I'm now rushing through because I know I'm running out of time. Unemployment, especially of youth. Yeah, going back to democracy, one of the drivers going back to leaders who are not accountable is marginalization of a section of population based on ethnic grounds, tribal, religion, color. These are all drivers of conflict. How do we deal, how do we address such problems to make sure that development partners don't just talk to leaders, but talk to people, to know what the problems are, so that they can, when they invest their taxpayers' money to alleviate poverty, they're able to do the right thing, the correct thing that can prevent violence. So unemployment is a huge problem, especially of youth. They're on the street. Universities or tertiary education institutions are churning out hundreds and thousands of young people, but they're on the streets because then there are no jobs. Government can only employ a few, but the private sector is not there. How can we come up with innovative ideas so that these young people get something to do, and so that they can earn a living which keeps them comfortable? Climate change, I always link climate change problem to population growth in Africa. There's explosion of population. Our land is not getting bigger. We're destroying wetlands. We're destroying, polluting, destroying forests because of population growth. I remember in 1992, I think, there was a huge conference on population growth. Where has this gone? I know UNFPA is doing some work to control that, but even then, it's not reaching the mass majority for them to understand that it's important to control that. So I need to cut down. So this event is of huge interest to me. It gives me a lot of hope because the religious leaders are taking the lead in here. It's my comfort or joy yesterday was not just in seeing how they interact with one another with warmth and speaking the same language, but also in my experience, I know very well that they're listened to. If a section of community is closer to the grassroots, whose children fight, who are the bottom law, it is the religious leaders. And I know they can be extremely instrumental even in prevention of conflicts. My legacy in the World Bank was prevention of conflict rather than investing only in resolution, but let's prevent it. And to me, I think the religious leaders can play a very major role because they're grieved, they're sick, they turn to religion, they turn to religious leaders to give them consolation, to guide them spiritually on what to do. So I think this event, I'm told it's been going on for a long time. I've heard about it, I've read about it, but I'm happy to be part of it this time. So thank you very much.